We're at the Mishnah on Daf Chof Amar Aleph, by the first wide line. Hakareach karcha b'roishay, someone who makes a bald spot on his head. As I forgot to point out, by the way, that we switched over from Rashi to Rivan on the previous Amud. I don't know if you want to quickly go back to that. Where is it? I'm not going to go look it up. But yeah, so this is not the Rashi, but the Rivan, who is a Talmud of the Rashi, says that it's talking about someone who does this for a mace. There's no Isser to make a bald spot on your head. The Isser is to do it as a sign of mourning. A Makkos pas roishay, someone who rounds out the edges of his head, the sides of his head. This is talking about making a line, cutting the hair that goes from the spot, the area where there's no hair right up behind your ear, till your forehead. You make a line straight from one to the other. That's Makkos pas roishay. Va'amashches pas ziknai, someone who destroys the corners of his beard. There are 5 corners, 2 on each side, plus the point of his chin. The Gemara will say, someone who makes one cut of a mace, in addition to making a bald spot for a mace, is also cutting himself. Chayiv. And all these you chayiv Makkos. Short shrita achas al chamisha mesim, mechamas shritas al meis echad chayiv al kol achas v'achas. If someone did one shrita for 5 mesim or 5 shritas for one mace, you can be chayiv for each one. The Gemara is going to say exactly what. The Gemara is not going to say exactly what this is. The Gemara is really going to say, as far as kareach karcha b'roishay, that you can have how you could be chayiv on more than one at the same time, and that will also apply here. What it's going to mean is that he does them all simultaneously. If he does for 5 things at the same time, but 5 separate things, 5 separate cuts simultaneously. Al haroish shtayim achas mikan ve'achas mikan. When a person is makif the roish, we said that yechayiv malchus. This Mishnah is giving a little bit of explanations about what had previously been said in the Mishnah, right? So we're talking about this, that the Mishnah had said that there's a lav that you can't cut from your forehead to behind your ear. So that's a person is chayiv 2, 1 for each side. Al zaken shtayim mikan v'achas milmata. The isur of hashchasa, the isur to shave with the razor, that's on the beard. That's 2 on each side, the 2 points of the jaw plus the chin. And then the other side also 2 points of the jaw. If he took all of them at one, he's only mechuyev 1. What that means is that if he it's not possible really to do all 5 of them at the same time. It means if he does it all in one shot, he starts from one end and he goes all the way around with his razor and cuts everything in one swoop, essentially simultaneously. The einay chayiv ad sheyitlenu betar. You're only chayiv for doing this with a razor. It's not clear. This is a major machlokes rishonim, whether this is referring to just the beard, right? We know that you're not allowed to shave with the razor. Is this just referring to the 5 points of the beard, the 2 jaw points, the 2 places where it sticks out on each side, plus the chin? Or is it also going back about what we said about the Isser HaKafa, that you can't cut from behind your ear to the forehead? You can't make a bald line there, if that's also only not allowed with the razor. Eliezer disagrees. He said it doesn't have to be a razor. It could also be with these different kinds of tools that people use to shave wood, and he uses that to shave his beard. He says you'll be chayav on that. It doesn't have to be specifically a razor. Tanu Rabban la yikru karcha. Yachal afilu karch 4 v'5 krichas lo yechayev ela. Talmud Leimer karcha. I might think even if a person this is the first din in the Mishnah. We said you're not allowed to make bald spots for a mace. That's a lav. This is probably one of the least applicable lavim. It's very hard to find someone who was over on this. That out of grief, he went and cut bald spots on his head. So how do you know? I might think even if he did 5 separate krichas, he made 5 bald spots. You only have one time. Karcha. The Torah says karcha. It says la yikruchu karcha. What does it have to say? It should say la yikruchu. What else are you gonna? La yikruchu means you shouldn't bald a bald spot. Well, I just said you shouldn't make bald. L'chayev, so that l'chayev al kol karcha karcha. B'roisham ma talmud laim. What does the pasuk mean when it says b'roisham? Levisha nemeles is guided. L'sesimu karcha beinenecha. Since the Torah says you shouldn't, skaidu is also to make a cut. We'll get back to that, how that relates to the other isser of making a cut. And it says, l'sesimu karcha beinenecha. You shouldn't place a bald spot between your eyes. L'meis yachal chayev ella al bein ha'inayim b'lvad. I might think that this isser is only when you make a bald spot. When someone makes a bald spot on a mace on the area that's between his eyes, meaning not literally, it's not here there, but meaning on his head, opposite that, where you put the tefillin. Minayin l'rabis kol ha'rosh, talmud laim b'roshim l'rabis kol ha'rosh. That's what b'roshim is to tell you kol ha'rosh. Okay, now I just want to go back because this is a confusing thing that it's not clear when it comes up all through Shas this limit. So there's 2 psukim here. The first pasuk is la yikchu karcha b'roshim. If you have the psukim on the side. So yikchu karcha b'roshim pa'askanam le'igalechu b'saram le'yisrutu sarates. This is talking about a kain. This is a pasuk that's specifically talking about a kain, and it says it's discussing the kahanim, and it says the kain is not allowed to make a bald spot in his head, and he can't shave his. It says pa'askanam le'igalechu. He can't shave the corners of his beard, and he can't make the yisrutu sarates. And then it says the second pasuk in Dvarim, a totally different place. This is not talking about kehanim. Loisis gaidu, which again means like lo yisrutu saratas. It means you can't make a certain type of cut. Loisasimu karcha beineinechem lameis, and you can't make a bald spot between your eyes for a mace. So we're making a gzeira shava here. Both places it says karcha, I think, or maybe it says paas. I don't remember what the gzeira shava was. The Rivan says what it is. But we make a gzeira shava from one to the other. So we learn from. So we're going to see that whatever it says by one will apply by the other. So now the Gemara says. So we used roish to tell you. Roisham to tell you that it doesn't mean, even though it says when it's talking about a Yisrael, it says beineinechem. It doesn't mean bedafka. It means on the entire head. And when it says karcha, that's going to apply to Yisrael as well. Sagt Gemara, ve'enli ela b'kehanim shibur nakatzav mitzvahs yiseris. So this pasuk of Beroisham that we're learning to tell you that even though by Yisrael it says beineinechem, we're saying Beroisham tells you it's not bedafka beineinechem, but includes the entire head. Yisrael minayin. How do we know Yisrael also will have the same thing? Kehanim generally have higher obligations than Yisrael. So maybe Beroisham saying being mechuyev on the entire head is only for a kain, but not a Yisrael. So nemer kan karcha, nemer lan karcha, mal alan chayiv akolach karcha b'karcha, v'chayiv al roish k'beineinayim. So we make the gzeira shava of karcha, and we say just like by the kain, Yechayev, first of all, we said karcha to tell you the Yechayev for each bald spot. And we also said roisham to tell you the Yechayev on the entire head. Afkan chayev al kol karcha b'karcha b'chayev al roish k'veineinayim. And we also will darshan the other way. Ulmal al al mace, just like by Yisrael, it says for a mace, afkan al mace. Also by a kayin, it will only be if it's done for a mace, not if he does it stamasa. But the Gemara asks the question. We're saying he's going to be m'chayev for each bald spot that he makes. What is the case? If you're saying you're talking about where he made a bald spot, he got asra, he made a bald spot, then he got another asra, and he made another bald spot. Pshita. Obviously, those are 5 separate lavin. Why would we need a pasuk The tell you're going to be chayiv separately for them. Ella b'chada hasra. Elamais, you're talking about we got one hasra, and then he made a bold spot, and then 10 minutes later he made another bold spot. This 5 times. Mi mechayiv, can he be mechayiv without a hasra immediately before he does the lav? Vatnan, nazir shayisoyso yayin kol yom, a nazir that's sitting on Purim drinking wine a whole day, and chayiv alachas, because he only had one hasra at the beginning. You have to have a separate hasra for each act. Amalei al tishta v'shaisa. But if you got a separate asra for each drinking, then he's a mechayiv for each one. So what are we talking about when we say that a person can be mechayiv for each bolt spot that he does separately? If he got a separate asra, then it's going to be obviously he's chayiv for each one. And if he didn't get a separate asra, he shouldn't be because he's missing the asra. So tomorrow, the sach chamash etzba'osav nasha v'svina b'vasachas. We're talking about where he took his 5 fingers and he stuck it in one of these creams that takes away hair, and he put it on his hair, on his head, and each finger made a separate bald spot. He got a hasra before this, and he did them all at the same time, simultaneously, 5 separate bald spots. He's going to be chayiv for each one separately.
Yeah, 1 warning or 5 warnings?
1 warning. The problem with using 1 warning for the whole day is that the warning has to be immediately before the lav. It's not the problem that you need a separate hasra for each lav; it's that it has to be together with the lav. So we're saying this is the case where you can have 5 warnings for the same thing. And the truth is, the Mishnah had said that you could also be mechayiv for 5 sritas. If he makes 5 scratches, he'll be chayiv for each one. And we'll be talking about the same case where he made the 5 scratch. He got 1 warning, and he made the 5 scratches all at the same time. 5 cuts. The kama shear karcha. What is the shear of a bald spot the person makes on a mace that he's going to be chayiv alav? Says as long as he makes it that is a bald spot, you can see his head, you see his scalp. It has to be the size of a bean. And this is a machlekes tanoim. Kama shear karcha kegris. One man amar. This is a machlekes tanoim. They have the same machlekes, whether it's the size of a gris or the sides, or that you could see his head. He says there are 3 tanoim that argue on this. Chad amar kegris, which is what we already said one time. Chad amar kadesh yirmi roishay. That's the other tana that we saw. Chad amar kashtei cyrus. And the third time, Tana says, as long as he takes out 2 hairs. And some say, rather than the third sheet of being 2 cyrus, they say it's kadasha, which is a bean. I think a gris is a smaller bean. They have different legumes. If you want to remember that there's a sheet that says a kadasha. There's a Mishnah in Tyrus that talks about a Baharis and a Michya. A Baharis is a kind of tsaras, and Michya is a place that there's no tsaras. And it's talking about Shirim over there. It says one is Kagris and one is Kadash. So that will remind you the 2 sheetas over here are one is Kagris and one is Kadash. Tana, pi hazug b'Shabbos. Someone who cuts on Shabbos a scissorful. He uses a scissor to cut hair of his hair on Shabbos. He's going to be chayiv from malacha. The kama mali pli hazuk. How much is the size of a scissors? The cut of a scissors. I'm Rav Yehuda shtayim. It's 2 cyrus. In fact, the Marava Tanya lekarcha shtayim. That brisa over there, that Mishnah, that brisa says the gabi the isser of making oneself bald as in grief. The shear is shtei cyrus, which was one of the sheetas that we said before. So how could you say, if we're saying lekarcha shtayim, and the first part we said is kamali zug, how could you say kamali zug is also 2 cyrus? Why would you say karcha? You wouldn't say one kamali zug, and then you say the second one shtayim, and it's really the same thing. It's the same brisa.
Two different surim. One's for cutting on Shabbos, the other one's for.
I said we wouldn't describe the shear in different ways when they're in the same brisa.
It's a semantic question. Why would you refer to 2 cyrus in 2 different ways?
Right. Obviously, Mali Piezuk must be different than Stein. Ema v'chein lekarcha shtayim. So the Gemara says no. It must be v'chein. It's not. It's not saying this is a different din. It's saying v'chein lekarcha shtayim, and it's coming to explain what the Mali Piazuk built. Tanya Nami Hachi. And Naita Mali Piazuk b'Shabbos chayiv. Someone who takes a scissor full, cuts a scissor full of on Shabbos is chayiv. V'kam Mali Piazuk shtayim. That's two. So that's very similar to what we just said. Elazar Ayma Achas. Elazar argues and he says even one here. Umoidim Chacham L'Rabeliezer. The Chacham agree with Rabeliezer. Amlaket Levanis Mitech Shkairis. Afilu Achas Shu chayiv. That someone who takes one white hair amongst black hairs, even the Chum say you need two hairs, and Rabbi Eliezer says you need one, they'll agree if a person has a white hair and he takes out that white hair on Shabbos, since he's Bedafka wants the white hair, since he wants to look young and vibrant, so that has chashivas, and he'll be chayiv on that.
It's fire because it's cutting.
I didn't think of Bayer, but I think has to be Eichel Mitech Pselis. Maybe
it's after, right?
Maybe I didn't think of it, but no. The problem is cutting because you're cutting it. Even though the shear normally for cutting is 2 cyrus, but if it's a chashav sire, if it's important to you, in this case it's important that one here because it's white and you don't want to look old. So that you're gonna be chayiv for Shabbos, but davazav hiluchu b'chaylasa, and but the Gemara mentions, by the way, you're not allowed to do such a. You're not allowed to cut out the white hairs. Mishum shenema liyavish geves simlas isha. This is a womanly type of thing to do, to take away white hairs, and therefore one is not allowed to do so. I don't know. I mean, I never heard that you're not allowed to dye your hair. I don't see why it's not. I'm sure people talk about it. Why wouldn't dyeing hair also be simlas isha? Zakdama v'makif paas harosh. We said someone who is makaf to pass a roish, he's going to be chayiv. The pass a roish is the points of his. I'm sorry, not the points of his head, the sides of his head, meaning from here to here. That's someone who makes the area behind his ears, the bald area behind the ears, equivalent to his forehead. That means if he makes it a straight line from one to the other, that's going to be the isser of being makaf pas roish. Both the one who is doing the cutting, the barber, and the customer, they both get Makkos. The one who's just sitting there in the barber's chair, he's going to be chayiv. He's like someone eating grapes. He's like someone eating dates from a sieve. He's not sitting there not doing anything. The amalachmani Rabbi Yehudi, the amalav she'em b'maisa leiken love. You should just, when you say this din, you should say that this is Rabbi Yehuda who specifically holds that a lav she'em b'maisa is leiken love. The person who is being served, the customer, even though he's not doing anything, he still gets malchus for allowing the barber to cut his hair. Rabba Amma b'makav la'atzmei b'divrei hakol. Rabba says, we're talking about someone who is cutting his own hair. He's standing in front of a mirror and cutting his hair. So he gets 2 malchus, one for being the barber and one for being the recipient for allowing his hair to be cut. And since he's doing a maisa, it's not shver. It doesn't have to be like Rabbi Yehuda says, lav she'em b'maisa like Rashi Aimer, misayeh v'divrei hakol. Rabbi Ash says doesn't have to be that he's even cutting. It could just be like the barber sometimes says put your head back, move your head like this. By moving his head, he's going to be fine.
All these lavin, including the karcha.
I don't know.
That the lav goes for both the. I never thought about this before.
I don't know. I don't know. I should have. I was just thinking as we were learning it, like it's a very strange thing that you should be mechuyev to be. There should be 2 separate lav and one for the one who's doing it.
I thought we would give a limit from the Torah.
I think it's in a different sugya.
I think so too.
Where's this vav? It's in Sanhedrin, so I should know it. Yeah.
It's a recent one.
Look what they say over here. Yeah, it doesn't explain it. Yeah, it's a long thing. I don't know where it comes from. Zok the Gemara, but it's a fair point. Hamashras pas ziknei, someone who destroys the points of his beers. Taner Rabban pas ziknei seif ziknei. Be'ezu seif ziknei shibayla ziknei. It's talking about the points of his face, and these are the corners, the parts that stick out here, somewhere over here, like the bottom, the top. I always confused about what's over here, and then the chin, maybe the size of the chin, and then the point of the chin. Someone makes a single cut. Maybe someone who cuts himself because of his house that fell down, or he's mourning not the death of someone, but he's mourning a financial loss, or his ship that foundered. The Torah says lenefesh. That is the pasuk of He's only chayiv for someone who died. How do you know you chayiv separately for each one? This is again talking about where he did them all 5 at the same time. Torah says either visheret, or it didn't have to say sheret. It said it in a visheret nefesh loititnu. It says nefesh loitishritu. Why does it say it in this awkward way? Tell you l'chayiv al kol shrita shrita. Yosi I'm minayin l'misharet shrita achas al hey mesim shu chayiv al kol achas v'achas. We just said if he makes 5 shritas for one mesim. What about the other way around? If he made a separate cut for all 4 mesim, then he's chayiv on each one. Tamalem l'nefesh l'chayiv al kol nefesh v'nefesh.
We made one cut for 5 people. But we said
right. What 1 for each one of 5 mesim.
If you mean 5,
it's not talking about we had in mind 5 people.
No,
I don't think so. I think it means that he made 1 cut for each one.
Would that be partial of course chayiv for each one then?
So
1 cut for 5, no?
For all 5, and he has a more 5. I thought it meant it could be right. I just assumed it meant he made separately.
That's the Tanakama.
No, the Tanakama was
they made against 5
I'll make right. They made 5. You're right. No, that's 5 cuts for a single mace.
For a single mace. That's
now we're talking about where he made. You're right. So minayin l'mashat shrita achas, but he has in mind 5 mesim shu chayiv al kol achas v'achas. Yes, he's chayiv 1 for each one of the 5 mesim. Tamalei mil nefesh l'chayiv al kol nefesh v'nefesh. How could you say that? We already used that pasuk to tell you that l'nefesh is to telling you that it's only for a mace, not for a different type of financial tragedy. So Rabbi Yosi shrita ugadida achasi. The Gemara says Rabbi Yosi holds that the pasuk uses 2 lashonos, right? We saw before we had the pasuk by the Yisrael where it said it's really on the previous pasuk. I'm sorry, in the previous Amud, it said. It says by Yisrael, they shouldn't cut themselves, so they shouldn't make scratches themselves. That's talking about for a mace, and it says you can't cut. And we said so we see there's a din of srita, and we just said. So we see we have one lashon of srita and one lashon of gedida. So Rabbi Yosi says they're both the same thing. That it doesn't refer to anything different. That means both of them mean, as we're going to see, there's going to be a different shita that srita is more a lashon of cutting, and gedida. I'm sorry, I keep getting this mixed up. That one of them is more a lashon of cutting, and the other one is a lashon of scratching. And it says over there it says over there by Gedida, it says Lames. So we already know because it says, we said Gzeir Shava, Karcha Karcha. It says by the Yisrael, it says Gedida Lames, and Shrita and Gedida are equivalent. So just like it said by Gedida Lames, it's going to also apply Shrita Lames. So we don't need Nefesh to tell you Shrita. We don't need a Nefesh to tell you that it's only on a mace, not on a different type of grief. Amar Shmuel, Hamasaret Bekli Chayiv. He says someone who makes a srita with a kli, srita is a more mashmayis of scratching, of making without a kli, of making a cut without a kli or a scratch. He says you make a srita with a kli, you're going to be chayiv a second one because he's saying like Rabbi Yossi that it's all the same thing. So the Torah said twice, so it's two separate chiyuvim. There's one for Mesaret and one for Gedida. They both mean the same thing, so you're chayiv twice. Meisrei srita Gedida achasi el shashita biyad Gedida b'kli. There's a brisa that says no, that srita and Gedida are the same, except for that srita means to scratch with his hand and Gedida means to do with a kli. That they are two separate things. So you would only be mechuyev one if a person did a srita, he's chayiv. If he does a scratch with his hand, he's mechayiv for srita. If he does a gedida, if he cuts with a kli, he's mechayiv for gedida. But that's not like Rabbi Yossi and Shmuel. Rabbi Yossi and Shmuel said they're all the same, and you just be chayiv two. He said it's two separate lav, and they just used two separate words. So the Gemara, who da'amar Rabbi Yossi? The Gemara says, even though Shmuel is there's this price that says not like Shmuel. Shmuel saying Rabbi Yossi has his own tana, so it's not a problem. Tani kam tana kaimei de Rabbi Yochanan. Al meis bein biyad bein b'kli. Chayiv al bein biyad bein b'kli chayiv. Someone who makes a shrita, whether it's with his hand or with a kli, he's going to be chayiv. Al avodas kechavim biyad chayiv b'kli potter. If someone makes a scratch as a form of idol worship, if he does it with his hand, if he makes a scratch with his hand, he's chayiv. But if he does it with a kli, he's potter. Because that's the form of that's the way they were over avodas kechavim. They did it. They scratched themselves. It says that they scratch themselves in their way of being over avodas kechavim with their swords and with their spears. So you see that they did do it with a kli. So you have to switch it around and say it's saying that the chiyuv of making a cut for avodas kechavim is only with a kli, not with his hand. The chayiv ala rosh. We said a person is chayiv for being makaf the rosh. Machli Rav Sheshes bein pirkei reisha. Rav Sheshes, when he would show the sides of his head to show where, like I was doing before, he pointed like this. This is what you're not allowed to cut. Rav Sheshes pointed to the different points of his face to show where it is that you're not allowed to cut your hair. If he took, what was that? If he took all five, what was it? I feel locked them. No, that's the wrong one. We said if someone, the Elazar says that you're chayiv, if someone takes all 5 points of his beard together, he's only going to be chayiv one. He says, the Torah says it's only one lav. The lav is, it's all one lav to take away the whole thing. So if you took away all 5, it's considered one lav. You're not going to be chayiv separately. So this is a very we're all familiar with this issue. You're only going to be chayiv for shaving with a razor. The Torah says you can't be megaleach. Galuach is a lashon of shaving. You're not allowed to shave, and shaving means, we think shaving is a shaver, but shaving means traditionally means with a razor. You're not allowed to shave your face with a razor, your beard. Maybe even if he shaves with scissors, or he cuts off his beard with scissors, you use a lashon of hashchasa. Hashchasa means to destroy the hair all the way to the bottom, and that's done with a razor, not with scissors. I might think even if he doesn't use a purpose-built razor that's intended to cut the person's face, but he used like a tool that has a sharp edge, maybe he should be chayiv on that also. The Torah says giluach, which is more a lashon of a razor. Okay, it said giluach sheyesh be'askacha haviyayim bezetar. It's talking about a type of shaving which refers to a razor that destroys it, and that is a blade. That's a razor blade, not a one of these tools that's used on wood.
But the rest is only for a mace, right?
No. This is talking about. This has nothing to do with the mace. This is talking about cutting your beard. For the mace, we said making a bald spot on your head, and that there was no. I don't think there was any restriction of how you did it.
That also mace, right?
Right. So bald spot and srita is a mace. The hakafa cutting on the side and the face and the beard are not on a mace. But it's not clear whether you have to use a razor for being makif, for payas. But there's two things. There's over here, which is the beard, and then there's cutting makif the hair, and that it could be, as long as you're using scissors, it's not a problem. That's a machoikas. I think the Svardim say you can't even cut with scissors over here, or to make it to go all the way down to the bottom. Everyone will agree you can shorten your hair over here. The question is, can you make a bald spot? How, once you cut it very short, you do like a one, you do a very short cut. I think the Svardim would say you can't even do that with a scissor. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. He says, no, even if someone shaved his beard with these planes, these wood tools, he's going to be chayiv. It says and it says loisashkas. So we made a gzeir shava of karcha to apply both, and that's why we said it has to be a giluach sheyesh ba hashchasa, which was a tar. So manach, if he holds the gzeir shava, he should need a razor. And if he doesn't have the gzeir shava, he shouldn't even be allowed to use a scissor, because the scissor is only because we say hashchasa that it has to destroy. So he holds of this gzeir shava, but he just disagrees about the metzias. He says that a rehitni is also considered giluach. It's also the mashmais of giluach doesn't exclude something done with a wood tool. Okay. The mission. Someone who makes a tattoo. I'm going to note to you, common misconception. There's nothing in this Gemara that says that you can't get buried with a tattoo. I promise you, when I was in law school, this was the most common question people would ask me. If I get a tattoo, will I be able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery? And it's no such thing. Someone who writes a tattoo, puts a tattoo on his flesh. If he wrote it in ink, but he didn't pierce the skin, or he pierced the skin but he didn't put ink in it, you have to have both. This is a mistake. He did it with ink, or with black ink, or with blue ink, or any color. So I'm sorry. He's chayiv for any type of thing that he writes, any color. He's only chayiv for writing the shem.
What's the last machoikas over here?
It's not a machoikas.
So
I'm sorry. The first thing is that it's just a statement. It's saying that this is any type of substance that makes that makes a color. He's going to be chayiv on.
This is the person's skin.
This that we said it has to be ksiva daya. It's no restriction on what the color is that you're putting in.
Blue.
Then a separate din that he says it's only when he writes the shame. As a shame, we'll see what the shame is referring to. Does he have to write the din of a tattoo is only if he's tattoos Ani Hashem? Amalei loy. Because the Tanya back up and Chav Shichto Shem Avodas Kechav until Rebbe Eliezer's or Reb Shimon's shita is you only chayiv for writing a shem of avodas kechav, of tattooing a shem of avodas kechav. Shenemar l'ksoives ka'aka loy titnu b'chem. Ani Hashem v'lo yacher. Mashmai says Ani Hashem and not someone else. That's what it just means to say. It's like a abizrayu of avodas zara. Yes, that's what he has to be chayiv. Amar Ramakia, Amar Rad Barava. A person can't put a certain type of ash on his wound. It was like a treatment, but the problem was since it appears like tattooing, it would make a color in the flesh when you treated your wound with this ash. Therefore, it's awesome. We just quoted the shame. Amar Malkia, this is Ramalkia. So these three dinim, and we're not going to go through what they are, but this din of shvoid, of a spit, and shvaches with a shivcha, and gumas, the din of a guma, which is really about the shtei cyrus by a girl when she's an adult. Those are b'shem Ramalkia. Beluris, which is a din of cutting the hair of a guy in a way that they used for avodah zarah. Offer makla, which is the din that we just discussed about putting ash on a wound of gvina, and the din about the gvina savet kechavim, Rav Malkiya. It's not Malkiya, but Rav Malkiya. This is like, and this is what we just said. We just quoted b'shem. This we just said Rav Malkiya, and the way I was saying it's Rav Malkiya. Rav Papa Amar Masnisa no Masnisa Rav Malkiya. Shmaitza Rav Malkiya. Rav Papa says it's a different rule. It's not like the 3 and 3 that you said, but rather those things that are explanations of Mishnayos and Brises are of Malkiya, and the explanations of Amoraim is of Malkiya. B'semanach Masnisa Malkusa. Malkiya is a lashon of Malchus. Those are the Mishnayos. Mishnah is a royal. My beinayu, ikabeinayu shvachas. The only difference that comes out between how you divide it up is which group the shvachas are in. Rabbi Barabaya kapad afilo aribsa de kuslisa. He was makbid on putting ink or dye into even a tiny prick that was made in a person. Ravashi says, no, on such a small thing, he disagrees with Malkiya. He says you can't put ash on a wound because he says people see there's a wound, they won't assume it's a ksayvus kaka, and therefore it won't be awesome. Okay, we'll stop over here.